From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. Our top story tonight: a man allegedly set fire to 2 Minneapolis mosques last week. Jackie Rom Little allegedly set a fire at Masjid Ar-Rahma Islamic Center on April 23rd and Masjid Ar-Rahma the following day. He also vandalized U.S. Representative Ilhan Omar's office in January, as well as a shopping center known as the Somali Mall, federal authorities report. Little has been charged in connection with all 3 attacks that are being treated by federal authorities as hate crimes, WCCO reports. The FBI and Minneapolis police officer Brian O'Hara believes that they are hate-related, as they are designed to inflict terror onto the Muslim community. A local Minnesota site noted the federal criminal complaint filed on Sunday said Little spray-painted 500 on the door of Omar's office in January. The same number was spray-painted on the side of a patrol car assigned to a Somali officer with the Minneapolis Police Department and in the entry of the Somali Mall. To some Christians, the number 500 means blessings from a divine realm or a guardian angel, the Ministry of Numerology claims. Little was taken into custody over the weekend. The complaint cited Little's mother, who told investigators he extensively harassed a Muslim female in the past and has had a fascination with fire from a young age. She confessed she suspected he was responsible for several unreported arson events. His mother was also the one who identified Little through surveillance footage. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has resumed a controversial initiative transporting busloads of newly arrived asylum seekers to Democrat-run cities, including New York. Mayor Eric Adams says his team learned over the weekend that Abbott, a Republican, planned to restart the busing program this week after a months-long pause. This time, Abbott is sending migrants who have crossed over to Texas from Mexico to New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, Denver, and Washington, D.C. Adams said Abbott is using this crisis to hurt Black-run cities. Spokespeople for Abbott did not immediately return requests for comment. It is unclear how many migrants Abbott is expected to send to New York City as part of the revived bus program. Tens and thousands of mostly Latin American migrants have crossed into U.S. border states from Mexico as waves of people flee violence and poverty in their home countries. Abbott drew widespread criticism when he started sending busloads of migrants last summer to New York, Chicago, and other cities without coordinating with local officials. Adams has estimated New York City will spend some $1.4 billion by July on housing and providing services for the migrants. In related news, the Biden administration announced Tuesday it is sending 1,500 troops to the U.S.-Mexico border in anticipation of a surge in migrants. Waves of migrants are expected as post-COVID restrictions end. The Pentagon approved a temporary increase of 1,500 military personnel to supplement U.S. Customs and Border Protection efforts on the southwest border. The move comes at the request of the Department of Homeland Security. Pentagon spokesperson Brigadier General Pat Ryder. Pat Ryder notes that military personnel will fill critical capacity gaps for 90 days. That includes ground-based detection and monitoring, data entry, and warehouse support until Border Patrol can address those needs through contracted support. Military personnel will not directly participate in law enforcement activities. Former Minneapolis police officer Tou Thao was convicted of manslaughter Tuesday for his role in the killing of George Floyd by another police officer, Derek Chauvin, in May 2020. Judge Peter Cahill says, like the bystanders, Thao could see Floyd's life slowly ebbing away as the restraint continued. He said this in a verdict that was 177 pages long. Tao made a, quote, conscious decision to actively participate in Floyd's death, Cahill wrote. Tao is the last of 4 former police officers to be convicted in Floyd's murder and will be sentenced August 7th. Floyd, a black man, died after Chauvin, who is white, pinned him to the ground and put his knee on his neck for more than 9 minutes. Floyd's cries of "I can't breathe" and his death became a rallying cry for protest worldwide. Chauvin was convicted of murder and manslaughter in April 2021. 2 other officers, Alexander Kang and Thomas Lane, pleaded guilty to charges of aiding and abetting manslaughter. COVID-19 vaccination requirements for federal employees and international air travelers will be lifted on May 11th, the U.S. government has announced. On April 10th, Congress passed and President Joe Biden signed a bill immediately ending the national and public health emergencies relating to the pandemic. The vaccination mandate was an important public health measure to protect millions of lives, the White House said. The Department of Homeland Security also no longer requires foreign travelers entering the country by land, ports, and ferry terminals to be fully vaccinated against COVID and provide proof of vaccination. However, more than 1,000 people are still dying weekly because of COVID in the U.S., the New York Times reports. Houston is one of the most diverse cities in the United States, while Texas has the 5th largest Muslim community of any state. To reflect Muslim culture, the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston, recently opened 6 additional permanent galleries in its Art of the Islamic World's wing. The wing now is filled with hundreds of works donated by the collector Hussein Afshar. The addition of 6 new galleries almost doubled the square footage designated for Islamic art at the museum. It is, quote, perhaps the most extensive collection of Iranian art in private hands, says museum director and chair Gary Tintereau. This expansion comes 15 years after the museum launched its Art of the Islamic World's initiative. New Jersey will celebrate its first Muslim Heritage Month in 2024. Governor Phil Murphy recently signed a joint resolution naming January as Muslim Heritage Month. The designation aims to promote awareness and appreciation of the many contributions of the state's Muslim community. New Jersey has one of the highest percentages of Muslim residents in the nation. The bipartisan legislation passed a vote in the New Jersey Assembly in April after clearing the Senate in February. Democratic and Republican lawmakers unanimously supported the bill in both chambers. Zainab Sayed, president of American Muslims for Democracy, one of the groups that pushed for the creation of New Jersey's Muslim Heritage Month, said the state will be the 4th in the U.S. to recognize American Muslim legacy. United States and Turkey sanctioned 2 Syria-based Al-Qaeda financiers. Details of the story come after the break. Stay tuned and we will be right back. Welcome back. U.S. and Turkey are cracking down on a pair of financiers affiliated with Al-Qaeda-linked groups in Syria, the countries announced Tuesday. Joint sanctions are being applied to Omar al-Shiak and Kublai Sari for financing U.S. and UN-designated terror groups. Brian Nelson, the Treasury's top official for financial intelligence, said the collaboration between the countries increased the ability to more effectively disrupt terrorism networks. Al-Shiak is a leader with Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, serving on its Shura Council, and was a financial leader in its predecessor group Al-Nusra Front, tightly linked with Al-Qaeda, the Treasury said. Sari is part of an Uzbek group affiliated with Al-Qaeda, operating primarily in Syria's Idlib province, and he received funds to purchase weapons. A Palestinian hunger striker died Tuesday in Israeli custody nearly 3 months after being detained over his ties to an Islamic freedom fighting group. The death of Qadr Adnan drew Arab condemnation of Israel and was swiftly followed by 3 rockets in Gaza. The rockets fell on open areas, says the Israeli army. It reports no casualties. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shataya described the death of Adnan, who was arrested in the occupied West Bank, as a deliberate assassination. The premier said Adnan's request to be released was rejected, while he was neglected medically and was kept in his cell despite the seriousness of his health condition. Israel's prison service announced the death of a detainee affiliated with Islamic Jihad. He was, quote, found early this morning in his cell unconscious, the prison service said. Adnan, 45, was the first Palestinian to die as a direct result of a hunger strike, a Palestinian prisoners group reports. Other Palestinian detainees have died as a result of attempts to force feed them, the advocacy group's director, Qadura Faris, says. Palestinians shut down shops as they observed a general strike in the West Bank cities in response to Adnan's death. Al Jazeera journalist Hisham Abdulaziz was released after being held for almost 4 years in pre-trial detention in Egypt, the Doha-based news network said Monday. Abdulaziz, an Egyptian journalist who works for Al Jazeera's Mubashir channel, was released early Monday. He was among the journalists detained in Egypt after the 2013 military takeover that overthrew then-President Mohamed Morsi. In June 2019, Abdulaziz was arrested while traveling from Qatar to Cairo for a family visit, according to Al Jazeera. There is no confirmation yet from Egyptian authorities. Other Al Jazeera journalists, Baha el-Din Ibrahim and Rabi al-Sheikh, remain in detention in Egypt, according to the Qatar-based broadcaster. The Somalian government has launched its first national population and housing census in decades. The count is expected to take 2 years. Abdi Ali Aj, head of the Somali Population and Housing Census, will be overseeing the project. He said 30,000 data collectors will be following a standard methodology used internationally to conduct the count. Aj said the census will start in the urban population, then move to the rural and nomadic populations. There will be mapping of the country using satellite imagery of towns, cities, villages, and rural areas before the count begins, he added. Mapping will take about 8 months. There will also be training for data collectors before the counting starts in October 2024. The United Nations estimates 1.4 million Somalis have been displaced by the current droughts. Somalia's last conducted a formal census in 1975, which recorded a total population of 4.2 million, Aj says. Mahbooba Mufti, former Chief Minister of Indian-held Kashmir, said the situation in Jammu and Kashmir is worse than Guantanamo Bay. Mufti says that since the preparation for holding the G20 event began in the Union Territory, hundreds of local youth have been taken into custody. She's considered a pro-India politician. Speaking at the party headquarters, Mufti alleged the arrest, torture, and questioning of youngsters has begun at police stations. She says hundreds of youth from South Kashmir have been put in jails without hearings. Before we end today's news, may I make a special request? It takes 55 hours of work daily to produce the news for you. It's news with a unique perspective, and you find it only here. Sound Vision is a nonprofit organization which produces this news. And just like PBS and NPR, it depends on your donations. Please visit Muslim Network TV to donate and click the link below to donate. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for latest updates. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.